This is Duke University.
Reading both of them, I couldn't help going back to a time of my childhood when I had a grandmother who was illiterate. She couldn't read, and she would ask me once or twice a week to sit down and read the Bible for her. So one week it would be the what was called the Old Testament, and the other week it would be the New Testament. And I was always struck by the fact that both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, miracles occupied a very central role in the whole narrative of salvation, which indeed is the principal matter of the so-called Holy Book. It appeared to me that there were nevertheless some slight differences between the miraculous in the Old Testament and the miraculous in the New Testament. We don't have much time to go through the details, but the miracle in the Old Testament had something to do with a point Brian raised by the end of his comments. These were miracles which were generally of supernatural or cosmic nature. The best one I really liked was the miracle. The Jews are trying to run away from Egypt, and they are really making headways, and suddenly they have to cross the Red Sea. And then the miracle happens, the Red Sea is opened up, and then they cross, and then they are followed by the Egyptian troops, which arrive there and try to pursue them, and then the Red Sea just covers and drowns the. I was absolutely amazed by that miracle, and I could visualize it as a child. I could make images of. I could see this scene happening. So it had an effect on my imagination. Not only on my imagination, but it had an effect on my memory as a child. So far so that when I remember my childhood today, it is inseparable from the memory of those images I made of myself while reading the text of the Bible. So it seems to me that these were miracles which were then, as I have described them, miracles of a God who, as we know, the God of the Old Testament, a very powerful God, very omnipotent, extremely jealous, vengeful to a certain extent, who rules basically by, he has no problem ruling by terror or threats, and a God who has enemies. And you talk a lot about enemies, both of you in your texts, and a God whose law of love, since you mentioned that, is not so much inseparable from the law of tyranny, if you want. Love and tyranny being brought together in an act that is hopefully an act of salvation. So when we talk about miracle, miracle of as a divine signature, it seems to me we have to go a bit further and really confront the problem of the nature of that divine. Who's God? Who is this God we are talking about? Who is performing what kind of miracle? And it seems to me that in this matter of the Old Testament, the miraculous, it lacks poetry. What really I think about now is that it's a kind of miraculous that is devoid of poetry, but full of terror. Brian, you mentioned that, and a willingness to destroy, willingness to go about into the act of destruction. Now, I really like the miracles in the New Testament. I like them very much for a number of reasons. I'll just mention four reasons very briefly.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.